Hi, my name is Phil. I'm the executive chef here at Clover Food Lab, and today we're going to be talking about New Haven style pizza. So if you've been part of our pizza program for a while, you should be pretty familiar with our dough at this point. It's a pretty high hydration dough. It can be very stretchy. It's a little hard to get it really thin. For New Haven style pizza, the whole object is to get it as thin as possible. These are pizzas that are cooked in charcoal fired oven, super high heat for a shorter amount of time. So today we're going to show you a little bit about how to get your pizza as thin as possible and kind of try to replicate that at home. To start with, the proof time on this dough, rather than being about an hour on the counter, this is closer to 2 hours. So you'll see it's very jiggly, very well proofed. And when we're dimpling this, rather than trying to define crust on its own, we're actually going to dimple it all the way to the edges. And then when we are dressing and saucing it, we're almost going to take that all the way to the edge as well. This is going to give it ability to be really, really nice and thin and get really crispy. So first thing we're going to want to do after it's proofed, you've made your ball, it's all nice and smooth. We're just going to get in there and gently push down the pizza and really get those big bubbles out. I wouldn't worry about really crushing them, but you don't want any big bubbles kind of causing your pizza to cook unevenly in the oven here. And of the American style pizzas, this is probably one of those closest related to your classic Neapolitan pizzas. Right. So once you have it dimpled, I'm going to start stretching it. And this is one where I would really employ that sort of over the back of your knuckles stretch. If you're confident, you can try spinning it in the air and getting it stuck to the ceiling. But we're just going to keep working that back and forth. You don't really need to worry about stretching the center. It'll do that on its own. This is just going around the edge. You want to keep an eye on the back, so it'll be a little hard to see here, but if you have a good light in the room, you'll be able to start kind of seeing that through the dough as it stretches. And as this goes, you'll want to move a little faster so that it doesn't tear. Alright, and you're going to want to take this as far as you can on your pizza pan. Let's see how we did. All right, now that you have your dough all stretched out, we can move into topping it. And for this portion of the video, we're going to bring in our CMO, Kiernan, who is a New Haven native and aficionado of the New Haven style pizzas.
And I brought the shirt. This is my Zupardi shirt, technically in West Haven, but New Haven style pizza. And you can see it looks like the pizza boxes of that classic New Haven style pizza. So I feel like I'm kind of quality control, keeping you honest here.
Absolutely.
You Bostonians trying to make this New Haven style pizza.
It's no Pizzeria Regina, but we're going to be okay with it here.
I will say, thinness-wise, I'm feeling very good about where you got to here.
Given that this is a really thin crust, one of the steps that we often do here that's super important is putting on a little bit of oil before you go on with the red sauce. This is going to help to kind of insulate your crust a little bit from the actual wet ingredients in the red sauce and keep it nice and crispy so it doesn't get soggy in the oven. And you just sort of move that around with the back of a ladle. And because this crust is so thin, you want to be really delicate with this. No pushing really hard. You don't want to tear your dough now that you've worked so hard to get it nice and thin.
Phil, would you say this was inspired by any particular pizza place in New Haven?
So when I was in school, the two that we heard the most about and were often encouraged by our professors to go visit were Sally's and Frank Pepe. Mm-hmm. I would say that this is probably closer to the Frank Pepe style, which I think is a little bit thicker than Sally's. I think it's going to be a little easier for people to execute that at home, and without a real coal-fired oven, it's really hard to get that super intense char.
Out of those two, I'm a great fan of Sally's, but they're both interesting cases of the New Haven pizza culture changing, because both have new owners in the last decade that are starting to scale them up. And so Sally's, I believe, is at 4 locations. Some of those are coming soon. One is coming to Woburn, Mass, actually. And Pepe's is already up to maybe 10 or the low teens, and I know one's already open in Florida. So, I'm happy for the ambassadorship, but it was a big jump from the New England area all the way to Florida for Pepe.
All right, so once we have our oil down, we're gonna go on here with our marinara sauce. So this is our regular marinara, so slow cooked, sort of a Sicilian style red sauce. Now, Kiernan, how do you feel about volume of sauce on your pizza? Do you like them really saucy, a little saucy?
For the red New Haven style pie, I like it a little thin, actually.
Yeah.
I think you know, the crispness you want to be able to maintain, and I know there's like a particular cooking instruction for this one to help you get something like the char that you could get in New Haven on usually a coal-fired pizza oven. This recipe is actually a little simpler than what many of our toppings are for our pizza boxes, but that's very intentional because you want the flavors of the tomato to be the top highlight of having this sort of pizza. And I think getting that nice thin layer on top of a crisp crust is the best way to do it.
Yeah, you know, with pizza in New Haven, mozzarella is considered an extra topping. If you order just a regular pizza, you're going to get a tomato pie, not a mozzarella, you know, heavy cheese pie.
No, you got to have a tomato abitz, as they say. And abitz is a New Haven only word for pizza. It's spelled A-P-I-Z-Z-A. And the place I grew up going in North Haven, it's called Grand Abitz. And you can always tell the locals because they say it correctly and everybody else says, a pizza?
All right, and next, this is going to get a little bit of oregano sprinkled on before the pecorino. So you're going to get a lot more of this than you need in the box. You can save it and use it for other recipes, but I would say, you know, take about a teaspoon in your hand and kind of break it up as you sprinkle it over. This is kind of a rough cut oregano, so if you sprinkle it straight from the bag, you're going to get some big pieces in there. I would avoid getting it on your edges because it'll just burn if it's not in contact with the sauce.
It smells absolutely amazing as you're putting it on. There's a New Haven pizza challenge where people go and get the red pies and maybe you get a pepperoni version, and you know, you go to the top 6 places, have 10 people come over, take notes, and then everybody votes on their fave.
Very cool. Yeah, I've seen actually something similar here with the cannoli shops in the North End. There are cannoli-specific tours where they take you to, you know, the Modern and to Mike's and a couple other places, and then have you vote on which cannoli you liked the most.
ApizzaTube coming soon.
Cannoli is a tube.
Oh.
So the last thing we're going to put on here, traditional for the tomato pie in New Haven, is a little bit of pecorino. So I would think of this more as a seasoning than a topping. You know, you're using this to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of sort of that tangy flavor, but not really to have like a melty cheese topping on there. Obviously, you know, it's cheese, follow your heart when it comes to the amount you want to use, but we're going to try to keep this relatively authentic to the style. Particularly for the folks who get the large box, I recommend trying this a couple different ways. If you want to do one that's, you know, very lightly sauced like this, I think that's a great way to kind of introduce yourself to the style. But if you want to do one that's heavily, you know, more heavily sauced, you know, I would encourage you to still try to stretch it as thin as possible. But we give you a lot more sauce than we're using here. There we go. So that's our New Haven style pie. We're going to put this into a 450 degree oven, which is a little higher than our normal temp. Honestly, if you've got a good oven and you trust it at higher temperatures, don't be afraid to crank it. You could take this all the way to 500-600 degrees. Those ovens that they use get up to about 900. So, you know, you're not going to hurt the pizza. You might make your house a little warm. But yeah, we're going to take this next door and bake it, and we'll be back here in a minute. All right, and so after about 12 to 14 minutes, your pizza should look like this. We've got some really nice leopard spots on here, nice little bit of charring on all those bubbles. If your home oven has a hard time doing this, you can also try to replicate that using a broiler, or if you happen to have a blowtorch, like a little one for creme brulee, you can also kind of go around the outside and achieve a little bit more of that characteristic charring. Let's see what we did here. All right, Kiernan, let's see how we did.
All right, the real test. Here we go. It's got the crisp. I like that.
That sound.
Oh, it's like I'm on the New Haven Green, relaxing in the sun. Well done.